My husband asked me to be a stay-at-home mother, but went insane when I agreed, then spent months trying to manipulate me about it. My husband asked me to be a stay-at-home mother to his daughter, my stepdaughter Lizzie, 4 years ago, but I said no. Fast forward to now. I am 6 months pregnant with our son. I told my husband that I'd love to be a stay-at-home mother, and since Lizzie is only 8 years old, that would allow me to care for her even better. In response, he looked at me disgusted and became furious. He yelled that we had agreed I wouldn't be a stay-at-home mother years ago and it was bullcrap. I was changing my mind now. He said I was a rotten stepmother. This hurt a lot. His daughter calls me mom. I wake her up, I dress her for school, I take her to appointments and treat her as my own. Anyway, he said I clearly loved our son more than Lizzie, and it was disgusting the obvious favoritism I was showing him. He also said I shouldn't be allowed to stay at home with our son if his daughter didn't get to experience it with me. Also, for the record, Lizzie is very excited about her little brother and can't wait for him to be born. She's never expressed any kind of anxiety, sadness, or jealousy towards him or me. I was shocked and stunned. My husband stayed on the couch and I did a lot of thinking. I was very hurt by what my husband said and frankly a little angry at his accusation. I do not love the baby more than Lizzie. I do love Lizzie, and while I admit I feel a deeper connection to this baby, I feel that is due to the fact that I'm going through the experience of pregnancy and it's really hitting home for me this baby is half me. But that doesn't mean I love Lizzie any less. So I went to bed that night very angry after my crying jag because I love Lizzie and I do deep down know that I have been a great mom to her. The next couple of days were very quiet. I was distant but polite to my husband and still warm and cuddly with Lizzie. I didn't really want anything to do with him. My husband started picking on everything I did for Lizzie and around the house. Started saying more things like, why are you bothering? And that's not how this should be done, and I'll bet that makes you feel just great. I had had enough. After I put Lizzie to bed, I told my husband I was sick of his nasty attitude, and he was setting a toxic environment for his daughter, and that if he had something to say, he should say it. He started to yell and scream again, but I put my foot down this time. I said, I want to work through whatever problems we have and get this issue resolved because I love you and care about you, but I will not take toxic abusive behavior. I will not talk to you until you are ready to be respectful and kind. My husband lost it even more and screamed, I'm sleeping on the couch. So I said, excuse me, I am heavily pregnant with your son and every part of me hurts. I need access to the bathroom when I wake up at night. I will be sleeping in the bed. You can either join me if you can be quiet or you can sleep out here. He seemed kind of taken aback and I just left and went to bed. I guess he slept on the couch. The next day after Lizzie went to bed, I said that I think we need to set up an appointment with a marriage counselor. My husband said I'm the only one with a problem, so he won't go. I asked him to please tell me what was bothering him then so we can work through it. In a nutshell, he is ticked off. I didn't want to quit my job and be a stay-at-home mother for Lizzie, but I do for our son, and so therefore I love our son more, and that makes me a terrible person. I explained like I had before that I didn't want to quit my job at the time. He got very defensive and said it's clear I've never trusted him to be the provider, and that makes me a bad mother. I asked why didn't he quit his job then and be a stay-at-home dad? He went quiet. He also said that since Lizzie never had the experience of a stay-at-home mother, then our son shouldn't have the favoritism of getting it either because it wasn't fair to Lizzie. I said it was ridiculous to punish me and our son for being unable to travel back in time and to change the body Lizzie was conceived in. I also said infants need a lot more care than pre-K kids. That opened up a whole other can of worms with my husband telling me he resents me for not quitting work and being a full-time stay-at-home mother. He then went on and on about how I'm breaking our agreement for me to not be a stay-at-home parent and how that makes me unstable. I pointed out I have a right to change my mind and I won't give my baby to a stranger to raise while fretting about him all day at the office. I said I was very willing to do more things with Lizzie, like take her to the zoo and museums with the baby, get involved at PTA at her school, and go to her sporting events so me and her brother can watch her while she practices. I said this is healthy for all the children, and he had a warped view of justice and fairness by depriving our children of a healthy environment because Lizzie's mom was an unfit parent. I said his guilt won't go away by taking opportunities away from our kids, and that I was willing to work out whatever issues there were, and to go to a counselor and speak to child psychologists and other professionals that could give him an unbiased professional opinion. No, he became violently angry again and said I was going back to work 2 weeks after the birth, and that was the end of the discussion. That I had had my chance to be a stay-at-home mother, and since I didn't take it for Lizzie when I could, I wasn't allowed to do it now since he wouldn't let me. Now, as much as I love my husband and our children, I will not be controlled. I will not be told where I can and can't work. I will not be told if I can or can't work. I am not a dog. I will not be told to deny my own baby his mother and hand him to a stranger because his sister got a bad start in life. Purposely neglecting your own child opportunities in the name of fairness is insane. That is being a bad parent. The fact that my husband wanted to do this to me and my son flipped a switch in me. I stood up calmly and told my husband I was leaving, that he had crossed the line and I needed space from him, and that I would not subject any child of mine to this kind of environment. I said, when things calm down, we can go to marriage counseling because he clearly has deep-seated issues that need to be worked out. He became hysterical and said I can't leave, that we have a family, that I can't take his son, etc., etc. I was just done by that point. I said that for once he will take Lizzie to school and I will leave during that time. I went to our room and and started packing. He started throwing my clothes out of the suitcase and screaming at me. I was honestly pretty terrified. I had never seen my husband like this. I told him if he tries to prevent me from going or touches me in any way, I would be calling the police. I also said I was calling my mother to come and get me. Maybe it was an overreaction, but I was scared senseless and I just wanted to get myself and my son away from it. He started crying really hard, just sobbing, and walked away. I called my mother and said she needed to come and get me immediately, that I didn't feel safe and I needed to stay with her for a bit. I quickly packed what I needed and my mom came and got me. My husband and I were no contact for a couple days, and then he started texting and calling on day 3, saying Lizzie was picking sides and being unstable, and that I had left when he told me to treat the children fairly because he didn't think our son should get a stay-at-home mother because Lizzie didn't, and they completely ripped into him. His best friend Craig asked him what the F was he on to come to such a ridiculous conclusion. He pointed out all I had ever done for Lizzie, and that me being a part-time working stay-at-home mother would benefit her too, because I would be able to do more things with her and spend more time with her, and also that he was an idiot. His brother Daniel was even more to the point. Daniel called my husband an eye-hole and douchebag and said point blank he didn't deserve me. He said my husband was being a controlling jerk and punishing me for his beach of an ex-wife he shouldn't have married and reproduced with in the first place. Apparently there is a lot of family anger on my husband's side for him marrying and having a kid with his ex-wife due to her substance issues and her violent and manipulative tendencies to members of my husband's family. Anyways, Daniel said I was the best thing to ever happen to him and Lizzie, and he was ruining it with his own 2 hands, and he better man the F up and get over his ex and start treating me better and appreciating me more, and that he was being a crappy parent to Lizzie and our son by thinking that forcing me to return to work was okay because that made it fair, and that I was a far better mother to Lizzie than his ex ever was, and I did a damn good job of showing my love for her. Well, after they visited, it didn't take long for my husband to start blowing up my phone, begging me to come back, that he couldn't function without me, etc. He also broke my rule and said Lizzie wasn't doing well without me, which really angered me and broke my heart because I love that little girl, but it felt so manipulative. I basically told my husband if he continues to use Lizzie as a reason I should come back, I would be filing for divorce because I would not be with someone who uses a child as a manipulative tool, and that I didn't want to be a replacement mom for Lizzie. I wanted to be his wife and have a family with him that included Lizzie. I said get a therapist and into couples counseling with me, or he would be getting divorce papers because I will not have my son in a toxic, controlling environment. My husband agreed to both, saying he couldn't live without me and he knew he needed help. Our couples therapist was great. She touched on all the issues I wrote about and tried to get my husband to see he was being unfair and controlling, and that while it was understandable he would have a lot of fear and pain from his previous marriage, it was cruel to take out his issues on me because I had never wronged him and was not his ex-wife. So why was he making for me paying for what she did to him? It basically boiled down to my husband being afraid of me becoming like his ex, and that I would favor our son and hurt his daughter or love her anymore. The therapist touched on the issue of his kids versus our kids. She said my husband needed to keep in mind that it is natural to feel more connected and attached to biological children as opposed to stepchildren. She told my husband that while both Lizzie and our son were his children, this was not the case for me. And not only was that natural and expected, it was okay. She asked, had I not been loving and kind with Lizzie? Had I not taken care of her? Did I go out of my way and sacrifice for her as would any other parent do? My husband replied hesitantly but positively to all the questions. So she said then there was nothing wrong with my feelings or changing my mind as long as I continued to treat Lizzie with love, respect, and kindness, that there wasn't a problem. She also pointed out that while he might be affronted because Lizzie is also his biological child, it was not fair of him to expect I feel the same love and connection to her as he did, that it was in fact impossible because I had not carried her, gave birth to her, nursed her, and didn't come into my life until she was already a little girl. She said there are many kinds of love, and me having this special bond with the baby and wanting to stay home and nest was not only natural, it didn't mean I had lost any maternal love for Lizzie, that it wasn't less or wrong or unfair, just different, and that one of the biggest mistakes biological parents make with the step-parent is guilting or bullying them about their feelings towards stepchildren versus biological children and insisting it has to be exactly the same. She said while that is also a natural and protective instinct, that the biological parent actually ends up being the one causing friction and tension and making both step-parent and child feel inferior, and if care isn't taken, the stepchild can end up being the favored one because the biological parent tries to make up for a favoritism they believe exists. This was starting to be my feeling. She wrapped up by saying parents even tend to have favorites among biological children, but that the key was to not act on that or make it obvious, and that was what I was doing, and that it sounded like I had done a great job so far, and that we were even ahead of the game because Lizzie was excited about the pregnancy and had a very positive and close relationship with me. My husband tried to argue, saying that me staying home with our son but not her was blatant favoritism. The therapist countered by saying that I was not in a place in my career at the time to be a stay-at-home mother. I was not mentally ready to be a stay-at-home mother, that Lizzie was already ready to be in preschool. She wasn't an infant, and that most people wouldn't didn't want to give up a career they loved to stay home full-time to a child that didn't need full-time care and that they had no biological connection to. Lizzie wouldn't know the difference because she was old enough to know I wasn't her mother and didn't come into the picture until she was past the baby toddler stage, and that even small children can understand babies need more care than preschoolers, especially if it is explained calmly to them. In short, she said the fact I was more than happy to spend more time with Lizzie, wanted her to be in the baby's life, wasn't being territorial or aggressive about the pregnancy, and was still taking an active role in Lizzie's life were very good signs, and that we were, in fact, doing much better than many step families in our position. I'm sorry to say my husband tried, but just couldn't accept it. We tried going on family outings more and therapy, but he backed out saying he felt he was being ganged up on and that no one was on his side. He simply couldn't see why I should stay home with the baby. I asked point blank if he even wanted the baby and seemed shocked and said, of course he did. He just wanted to make sure his daughter got what was owed to her. In the end, he refused to compromise. And frankly, I saw it as being blatantly unfair and cruel to our son to insist he had to be put in daycare or given to a nanny. All in the name of fairness. Despite both his therapist and ours explaining fairness does not always mean equality. It's like he didn't want to see how me being a stay-at-home mother would also greatly benefit his daughter. I think my husband expected me to cave. All it did was make me lose love and affection for him, especially when he quit therapy. I warned him if he did or tried to insist on having his way, I would be filing for at the very least legal separation. I think he thought I was bluffing because when nothing changed, I went straight to the attorney's office. He was completely shocked when I had him served. I have arranged a semi-formal custody arrangement. My husband is not allowed to be in the birthing room when I go into labor. He has to stay in the waiting room. He can see and hold our son, but he will have to do it while I am there with someone else there. I insisted on this because I am frankly very afraid now of my husband and do not trust him at all. My husband is consumed with shock and grief. His family is furious with him and completely supports me, although of course they are very upset by the whole thing. I have told all of his family they are more than welcome to come to the birth and hold the baby. In fact, I want them there so they can supervise my husband with the baby so he doesn't do something horrible. My husband texts and calls and emails me constantly. He says he can't believe I'm doing this. Why can't I listen to him and understand him? Please come back and be a family again, etc. Lizzie calls me often and I talk to her. I've seen her a few times since this fiasco. Her father is not allowed to talk about her to me because I feel he's being manipulative. But I don't want to cut Lizzie out cold turkey either. I love that girl. I truly do. And I've cried so many tears over her going through this. I tell Lizzie I love her very much, that none of this is her fault, and that I'm doing the best I can to make things work. I tell her I still want her to be in my life and her brother's life, and that she's the best bonus daughter and sister in the world. I've heard from my husband's family. Lizzie is not taking our separation well and has even screamed at her dad for making me leave. I've been afraid Lizzie would hate me for this, but in fact, just the opposite has happened. Her grades are failing, she's depressed, and she cries all the time and has become very disrespectful to her dad. I have begged my husband to please get that girl counseling, but he has refused. The guilt I feel is overwhelming and crushing. I feel like I've single-handedly destroyed myself, but I know I am making the right decision by sticking to my guns and insisting I be treated with love and respect, and that my husband do the same for both of us. I can't fix him, and if he's unwilling to get help for his issues, I have no choice.